maybe a little bit longer than that. SikhRI ਨੂੰ ਵੀ 10 ਸਾਲ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਧ ਹੀ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਨੇ. And he is now actually here in New Jersey, moved here recently. So ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਤਾ, just want to inform everybody of that also. So he's going to be our first presenter. And ਜਿਹੜਾ second presenter again, Arvind Penji, she's sitting over here. She is a clinical psychologist and the India ਵਿੱਚ training ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ, lives here in the New York area. And maybe some of you don't know, but she has a program on just Punjabi. ਜਿਹੜਾ 4 ਦਿਨ ਚੱਲਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ every week, goes from 1 to 2. ਹਾਂਜੀ, 1 ਤੋਂ 2 ਵਜੇ ਚੱਲਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ. So those of you have just Punjabi social issues ਵਗੈਰਾ ਦੀ ਕੋਈ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਸੁਣਨੀ ਹੋਏ, ਕਰਨੀ ਹੋਏ, then you can look that up. And she Galbaat with Arvind Kaur. So that's 1 to 2. And it runs Monday through Thursday. ਕਿਹੜੇ ਦਿਨ ਚੱਲਦਾ ਹੈ?
Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday.
Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. But anyway, let's get a quick start and I'll let Harinder Bhai ji take over from here. Vaheguru ji ka khalsa, Vaheguru ji ki fateh.
Vaheguru ji ki fateh. Just a couple of things. Can you put your cell phones on either vibrate or silent? And we understand you might have to take calls, but if you do need to, just please step outside so the program can continue as is. Thank you. A little bit about what before I begin this session, actually, let's just look at it. What do you guys see here on the picture there? Hanji? So we know indoctrination works. You saw it so many times when Mrs. Gandhi's regime produced that it has ingrained in us. Bilkul theek hai gal. Aur dasso? Our ancestors? Oh my God. Don't tell that to the right-wing Christian world.
Well, the parents seem to be exhausted.
Hanji?
The parents seem to be exhausted.
Parents seem to be exhausted. Nurturing from parent to child. I don't know who played with my laptop. Do you know how I can get rid of the thing at the bottom? No, it's there. Anyway, if somebody knows, then they can fix it. What else do you guys see?
Hanging out.
Hanging out? Tagging along? Can we get is there a way to just turn these lights off? Thanks. Maybe then they can see the facial expression a little bit more.
Bored kid.
I only see the mom and parents.
Typical dad.
I think I heard that from my wife.
I think just the closeness of them. They're so bundled up.
Anyone knows, by the way, who they are? Like, what animal is that?
Orangutan.
Huh? That's pretty good. Are they very close to humans?
Yes.
How close are they? Do you know?
A few genes away.
Few genes away. The one from Gab or Hilfiger?
They're less than 1% genetically different.
Actually, 97% again. So they're not the closest to humans. Anyone knows who's closest to the humans? Chimpanzees and and the varieties of those. There are most studies and are out there. In fact, I went to one sanctuary in Malaysia, orangutan sanctuary. Orangutan, by the way, orang means people, and hutan in Indonesian means forest. So people of the forest, that's what the name means. And there's so many studies going on as to how to raise a child on orangutans, and they're hoping to understand how humans behave. I guess it's not enough to study humans anymore. But it's something interesting going on. I thought I'll just share that. I just found it unusual that some people might think they are sad. Somebody saw dad missing, physically there but missing, and maybe they're just bored. I don't know. Or maybe they're observing. Maybe physically they are there but mentally not together. There are all sorts of possibilities are there. But we'll talk about it. That's what this session is. What is Mappe Nyane business? This is going to be partly Gurbani related, partly what I feel and my own experience. And then we can go on from there. And then you guys get to participate in most of this. My initial disclaimer is, like in any other workshops, that, I mean, these are going to be my understandings. That's why it's a perspective. I actually didn't even, I took the Sikh word out. It's a perspective because the whole thing is going to be about Sikhi and parenting. And I'll be the first one to tell you, well, my wife can tell you anytime you want to call her, that I don't know much about parenting. So this is more about understandings from what Guru Granth Sahib and history is. And then application is different. And then second thing I want to mention is that I see a lot of dichotomy between what Gurbani says and what general expectations in the world are. And I myself go through them. In the last 4 or 5 days, I have been reflecting on it quite a bit as well. And it's just very different. I don't know. And I think that's part of the challenge. Do we listen to the newest book in town? Do we look at the newest psychiatrist in town? Do we look at Guru Sahibs? I mean, and there are different worldviews on these things. So since we are here in a Gurdwara setting, we don't have, we're going to definitely talk about Sikhi, but realize that, you know, at some point we all have to make our own decision. Which worldview are you operating in and how much of what you want to bring in? So this is going to be, the first session will be just on information element, and some of you will share information as well. Okay. Can I get a volunteer to read this?
The very fact that Guru Nanak himself had children and sweated and prayed for them indicated how life interested him more than abstraction.
Thank you. So Professor Puvan Singh has written this, and the idea behind this is that many a time when we talk about religion, whatever that means, or Sikhi, we end up making things very, what we generally call philosophical. And we really don't look at how, well, what Professor Puvan Singh is saying, that life interested him. So what does that mean? Why don't we hear more of that? I mean, we had Gurpurb, I heard some Shabads too, and I also heard Katha, and I've been growing up listening to it and participating in some of them. We rarely hear about his life in general, like this statement, you know, his relationship with his surroundings, his wife, his kids. I mean, isn't that where we're going to get the answers from? Mostly we hear about is his relationship with maybe the intellectuals of the time, which is important, we need to understand that. But in today's context, what we are discussing, we really don't hear much about that. Maybe we need to delve into that a bit. Because Guru Nanak Sahib didn't talk about, we have talked about, I recently had my daughter's birthday, and you might have your anniversaries and other birthdays coming up. This idea of love and celebration and gift comes in. But obviously, there's something more to life than that as well. And there is where the struggle is. I mean, this is where we need to look at how did gurus deal with it. They all had children too, except one who was very young. So how did they deal with that? What were their relationships at large, but at a smallest political unit, at a family level, what was their relationship? And we'll try to look into that a bit today from a historical angle. And I like this because he uses the word sweated and prayed. So, you know, as a political unit, we might have a husband, a father, or a mother might have a different view on what the child needs to be doing. But that doesn't mean they're not sweating and praying for them in their own way. So sometimes we get too, what we generally say, focused on the outer manifestation of things. Whereas the idea is, do you really feel it, as they'll call it? And what does that feeling mean? Is it only to be expressed on a particular occasion? Is it only to be displayed with a particular gift giving? Or is it a time which has to be given consistently? I don't know. All I'm saying is that something, sweating means you're busy doing something. Praying means that after you have done your work, you basically Gurbani says, Ab hum chali Thakur Pehar idea, that you say, you know what, I'm doing the best I can, you do the rest. Tell me what to do, that kind of idea. So, and I like this phrase quite a bit actually, these lines, because Guru Nanak, I'm sure we don't think about how did he deal with when he had, I mean, if you think your children are rebellious, I mean, he had rebellious children who started alternative religion. How the heck did he deal with that? Kind of a chaos at home, in the family, larger family, community. So things of that nature. Just think about that. Then what was his response? What was he doing while they are young adolescents, infants, toddlers, teenagers, whatever. And one decides to not even get married and become incorporated into some other religious orders, So there are life lessons to be looked at. Doesn't mean we have the answers, but I do want to touch on some of that stuff as well. Okay. So you guys tell me now, why parenting?
I have a question for you.
Hanji.
How did you come up with the idea that Guru Nanak Dev was a good parent?
I didn't say that.
I think your word talk was based on this fact.
I prefaced it that if this is let me go back. If this is Sikhi and parenting, one of the things we must look at is Sikhi, and in Sikhi everything starts from Guru Nanak. I would be very interested how Guru Nanak dealt with these things, is what I was saying, if we want to create a Sikh opinion. So that's why I said there's a dichotomy between what the world thinks what a good parent is and what a Sikhi worldview might have to offer. But good observation. Good. Okay. So why parenting? You guys tell me. Why are we interested in parenting so much?
That's pretty much, it triggered your next generation.
It triggers what?
It triggers your next, the trigger to your next generation. What you
Okay.
pass on as well.
So it's like about next generation. All right. What else?
I would say self-preservation.
Self-preservation. Self-preservation. Okay. It's sometimes called legacy, what you're leaving yourself behind and other things.
Thinking of the best, so you try to impart your thought process on the offspring.
Okay. Anyone else?
It's about happiness. Happiness in the family, happiness at home.
Yeah, now there are economists who developed an index on it too, where they're rating different countries on happiness index. And it's actually interesting. Southeast Asia is topping there. Something to look at. Okay.
Isn't it also something built into us?
I mean, there's a huge assumption all of us are parents.
No, I'm saying it's when you bring somebody to life, you're supposed to kind of now.
So you're saying it's just natural?
It's natural, yeah.
You know my standard joke on that. The M. Scott Peck, who's a psychiatrist, right? People asked him, what's the human nature? And he said, human nature is shitting in your pants. Because that's what's natural when you're born. If you have no training, naturally you just, that's what we do. And believe me, I mean, we all need potty training.
Yes.
So natural is, that's what happens. You just poop.
Some of responsibility.
Hanji?
Responsibility.
Okay, so you want to know parenting to be more responsible, okay? Okay.
Nurturing and guiding.
Nurture and guide.
I think raising good citizens. Be part of good community.
Okay.
Social and cultural setup guidance.
So part of guidance of any kind. Yeah. Okay. We put all kinds, social, cultural.
I think there are specific value systems that you may want your child to, and everybody's different in that. You want your child to focus on and imbibe.
Okay.
There's something immensely satisfying about parenting.
Really?
I mean, Imagine your life without that, and you'll realize how important it is.
I think at the end of the day, he's right. After
Oh,
the sweating and praying,
you were waiting for his endorsement? I'm just kidding.
I think after the sweating and praying, it is satisfying.
Were you done? Sorry.
You imagine your life without the what you're giving away, and you'll realize how important it is to you.
Leadership begins at home.
So it's,
What about the reverse? It's a learning process for the parents too. So
so is it satisfaction or is it
challenging.
frustration? We'll put it here.
It's like it's an emotional feeling which you don't get otherwise.
Thanks.
It's a flavor of emotion that you do not get any other way.
So, yeah, I guess you can take it towards this thing is that this is a training for you. What I felt is that actually once you learn how to deal with your kids, it's easier to deal with your employees.
So they are your guinea pigs. ठीक है. I mean, there are all sorts. Yes, go ahead.
I have a kind of contrary view of this. Whatever things that we have put on, they all tend to go towards ego. So kind of everybody is trying to, prove to themselves, to the society, to everyone that they're a good parent, to their kids. So it all starts with ego.
So we do parenting because of ego.
That's one of
That's kind of self-preservation. Same idea,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
happiness, next generation, responsible.
Okay.
Who are you trying to prove that? This was like we were living in a jungle. How would you care?
Okay. I know the word ego had to come in, but thanks for sharing that. In Gurbani, according to Gurbani, everything is ego. So we'll have to look at how in parenting. And then actually, I will take it in spirit. It's like when we say, my kid did this, right? That kind of idea. Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
Which is natural, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, this is your work product.
He sees that as a business model. ਉਹਨਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਮੈਂ ਗ੍ਰਾਫ ਦੇਖਿਆ in my last trip back, Air New Zealand the magazine, they had, how the human race started. So it started with Neanderthals and it just kept showing, and at the end it showed Android. So it's everything is becoming very business-like in that sense too. Okay.
So another one in which
Sure.
the end product was a fat person with a belly.
That's and that's being shown when we know that's not a fact in the world, right? I mean, the fact is that more than 68% kids don't have enough to eat.
Right.
But so it again shows you the kind of stuff we've been talking about. These things, they are going to be quite dependent on how you perceive the world and your realities. So it eventually comes down to, have we even thought about why are you doing this and towards what end? Or are you just following because that's what the world seems to be doing, or subculture seems to be doing it within us, among us? And that's what we do. We pick subculture rather than thinking about what we need to do. Okay, so here are some standard things. I don't know if you can read it, but I like this cartoon. It basically said 5 styles of parenting. Authoritarian is do as I say. Authoritative is, hey kiddo, do as I say, okay? Permissive is whatever you say. It's uninvolved. Or evil cyborg is misbehavior alert, destroy child. and it actually it's funny, but if you go read up parenting models, that's what they are. These are the models which people have been studying since 60s at least in the West. I mean, what I picked up is basically there is some element of protection and support you want to give to the child. Again, we're talking very generically. So whatever that means to you, I put down, there's sometimes physical support, sometimes emotional, financial, everything. I mean, all sorts of, there's an element of that. You want to protect them from whatever you feel is negative and evil, and you want to support them in whatever you feel their gifts are, right? The other reason is, and surprisingly, this word didn't come up when we talked about our list, love and direction. So direction, I think we are, especially Asian parents are very big on this. They provide a lot of direction. ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ already ਪੂਰਾ, in fact ਭਗਤ ਕਬੀਰ ਜੀ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ 'ਚ, ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਜਨਨੀ ਜਾਨਤ ਸੁਤ ਵੱਡਾ ਹੋਤਾ, that's how it starts, that the mother sees the child is growing, but ਉਹਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਵੱਡਾ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਔਸਰ ਘਟਤ ਹੈ, ਉਹਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹਦਾ ਟਾਈਮ ਵੀ ਘਟ ਰਿਹਾ. So basically when we are growing the child, we start developing our expectation कि मेरे लिए फिर ये करूँ या ये करूँगी, whatever the case might be, and the expectation gets built in based on how mental attitude, the ego kind of idea can come in, whatever mental attitude is being done at that time, that develops your expectation, which again could be satisfaction or frustration, and we see this enough if you watch any of the Indian soap operas, but anything on even Western channels, same thing. But you see it. In fact, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਯਾਦ ਹੈ, ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਕਰਦਾ ਗੱਲ, ਇੱਕਦਮ ਖਿਆਲ ਆ ਗਈ. When I was third year student at university doing aerospace, Friday nights we used to have some, 4 of us used to play some game in somebody's apartment, and we were just playing, and there's a knock at the apartment door. And you're like, who's there? So we opened the door. Some uncle just walked in. He's like, where is Sunil? Like, Sunil? Shoot, Sunil Shetty. There was a guy, one of the guys we used to hang out with from Bombay, and he was actually, and we were all adults here, he was just busy with his girlfriend, and the next door. And we're like, oh man, who is this guy? He comes in and he just barges into the room. He catches his son. This is what he says. He says, साले मैंने तेरे ऊपर इतने पैसे लगा दिए हैं, तू इसके साथ बैठा है. मैंने तो तेरी ऑलरेडी वहाँ पे बात की हुई है कि इतने पैसे मिलेंगे तेरी शादी के. And this guy literally, he was some big shot businessman from Bombay. He picked him up, grabbed him, took him to a small airport in Kansas, waited there 13 hours to take him on the next flight back to Bombay. We never saw him again. So this is kind of a thing, is it an investment? You're looking for a return back? There is part of that in sitting in all of us. I saw a very dramatic version of that while growing up. Like, oh my God. And so he thought he has spent so much, he's sending his kid to engineering school, doing masters and this and that. And how dare he defy, he's messing up his business plan. To put it in your words. The deliverables are not going to work out.
But I think we all have it as an investment. This guy had it as a money investment. Some of it have it as a social investment.
And
an intellectual investment.
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
Basically, the premise is the same.
Agreed. And that what I'm sharing is it can come out in multiple ways. So you got to really be careful as to why you are doing it.
Not just the parent, but I was seeing it from the other side also. When I went to school, there were people from South India. They knew why they were studying engineering, because they would get so much dowry.
Sure, but we're going to focus on
people from Bihar. Why do they want to do IAS?
Sure. But let's keep it in today's context. We're trying to see the dynamics between mappe nyane, right? So there are going to be exceptions. There will be people, they do what they do. I'm just showing that as a parent, today we're discussing more from a parent angle. That when we start investing in them, whatever that means, time हैगा, कुछ लेके देना, किड़ी क्लासां च भेजना, certain expectations get built in, and how those are getting built needs to be challenged a bit.
Expectations again, they don't have to always be for you. They can be just to make the child or the...
Exactly. So I'm not saying it is yours. I'm saying the data in the world shows, an anecdotal data, I don't have a statistical one, that in most cases, and I'm sure it has happened in your own families, even that right now, that frustration comes out in a different way because they are there. And we have seen them in the larger combined families and I'll get into it, how we end up using this at our level. But the love word, I'm going to skip it for now. Whatever love means, we have had this discussion in other forums. But what does it mean in terms of our mappe nyane? We got to explore that as well. What is love? What is tough love? How much of what you display, those kind of things. Okay, look at this graph for a second. I really like this graph. This is I totally related to it. This is what's going on somewhere in the brain. Which part is thinking what? And it's all happening simultaneously.
I think you got the worry center too small.
Maybe for you, but this is for normal population karwa, yes, you can say. So this is what we are busy doing. And this is normal. This is an average behavior. There's a worriness, too quiet, all sorts of things. Bragging center, we just talked about that. Curse control, fear of losing babysitter, enhanced hearing, effective bribes. I think we are pretty big on that as well. Anyway, you can read all those things. Any response to this?
So we had one comment that all these things in somebody's head is probably a woman because man, I don't know if all these things can go on.
Misunderstood.
Let us know when you want us to walk out of the room.
That's the purpose. Maybe next time pendles are not the
I think it's the same copy in both the minds.
Thank you, कोई section होता है. Multi section हो ही नहीं सकता.
One at a time.
ज़्यादा पहला ते फोन गट्ठा चुक लेने ते confusion हो जाती है.
That's why we have one big worry center.
An action center, right?
Okay. So, no, it's good. It's good. We gotta have fun with it.
I feel that there's one thing that's kind of missing in here. I think it's the built-in frustration that comes in with the challenges of parenting, because it's a small factor, but I think it plays a very big role in our life. You mentioned expectations, but more than that, you're trying to do the right thing to your child. And of course, children being children, they're not going to listen to you all the time. With that comes in frustration.
Right.
And with that comes in the parent needing to be a parent, because you forget that you are actually the parent, and the frustration can actually rule you over. So I think that factor is missing. I feel that's very big in all of our lives.
I agreed.
Then we have to maintain that balance, and we forget to do it.
Yeah, whatever that balance is. Everyone's got a different idea of balance. And we keep driving cars without having balanced tires, and we think we're fine too, right? So balance word is a very rhetoric word. I don't understand what that is. We use that so often, but this is just driving towards something. Eventually everything has to go back to your worldview, how you look at things. And that pretty much, we already do that, but it's recognizing what it is. Because that's how decisions are made. Who are you trying to please might be the thing. Yourself, your ego, your peer, your whatever, kids, and we have seen all sorts of models that way. Okay. Any other response?
This is, as I would say, it's early stages, because when you actually progress on, I'm pretty sure some of these areas are gone, because you learn as a parent, and your child learns to behave with you too. So,
or some of us never learn. So we remain at early stages.
That's called brain development.
Good. Any other responses?
I think we missed one point there, fear, right?
Sorry? Fear.
Yeah, fear is one big thing. Now you fear that what the other person is going to think.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. Good. Good observation. Fear is a huge one. Fear of failure itself.
Yeah.
There's so many fears.
Lots of fear, but
yeah.
Some generalizing fear.
Good. Any other responses? Okay. So, this is obvious, but this is where I want to start a little bit. We are all doing this. This is what we generally say. I heard my parents say this. I've heard myself and my wife say this to our kids now. You hear this a lot, that we're doing this for you, we're doing this for you. But is this it? In fact, ਜੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ ਮੁਤਾਬਕ ਦੇਖੀਏ, ਇਹ ਤਾਂ ਪਸ਼ੂ ਵੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ. It says all the animals are doing this. ਜਿਹੜੇ orangutan ਦਿਖਾਏ ਸੀ, that was no monkey business. They're doing it too. If you look at birds, I was actually asking Jodha Singh a couple of days ago, ਕੋਈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ lesson plan ਕੀਤਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ nest ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ. ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਕਿਉਂ ਬਣਾਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ, and he was explaining ਕਿ nest ਕਾਹਦੇ ਲਈ ਹੁੰਦਾ. So birds do it too. This idea of some support and some direction. So is this it? If Gurbani says, for example, that, or even today's scientists, we believe that human life is one of the better forms of life, right? We can be as sophisticated as we want to, go from our 7 Series to Gucci, or listen to our nicest concerts. We can go practice all sorts of sports, or if not play them ourselves. Mentally, we can join like Mind Science Foundation. Yes, there is such a thing, who are constantly studying what's happening with us. So we are sophisticated human beings, and we have options we are exercising. So why are we only focusing on, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying don't do this. But other species do this as well. So there is nothing unique we are adding to the mix. So what is it? What else do we need to look at? So if you're familiar with this Shabad, great. If you cannot read the script, I understand. But basically, this is Gurbani describing a normal life. Normal life, it says, the first thing which happens is child wants milk. Right? We were talking about early stages to gal hoyi na. Dujja mai baap ki so. Then a child develops some sense of who my parents are. Then they develop a sense of bhaiya, bhabhi, babe. Brother, bhabhi te babe is sister. Pyar upanni khed. Then they discover they want toys, particular toys. That it's not enough to have a sibling. Then they develop flavors of eating. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਹੋਣਾ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਨੂੰ. Yeah, I don't want this is too spicy. Like my son does this. ਗੋਲ ਗੱਪੇ ਖਾਣ ਲਈ ਹਰ ਵੇਲੇ ਤਿਆਰ ਹੈ, ਜਦ ਦਾ ਸਕੂਲ ਜਾਣਾ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ this is too spicy when he doesn't want to eat Indian food. So, they're developing their sense. And then adolescence comes in, hormones are kicking in, ਕਾਮ ਨਾ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਜਾਤ. And get what? ਫਿਰ ਇੰਡੀਆ 'ਚ ਤਾਂ ਬੜਾ ਹੀ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਸੀ, ਹੁਣ ਵੀ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਥਾਵਾਂ ਤੇ, ਯਾਰ ਮੇਰਾ ਤਾਂ ਵਿਆਹ ਕਰਾ ਦਿਓ ਛੇਤੀ. ਫਿਰ ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਓਕੇ ਸੰਜ ਕੀਆ ਕਰ ਬਸ. Let them get them married at least. they stop running around and do the funny stuff, right? And guess what happens then? Atve krodh vatan nas. Most of us become householders and we become very angry. This is kind of speaking to what you were saying. And Gurbani is recognizing this. It's like, it's just normal. It gets very frustrating because now you're in a family and you're getting angry all the time. You don't know what to do. And in that lifestyle, dadi case chitte hone shuru ho jande ne, which means you're growing old in that rut, doing your soccer mom thing, your job and this, whatever else it is. You're like, when is this going to end? That kind of stuff is going on. And before you know it, dasme tadda hova swa. That, what do they used to say in India? Ram Naam Satya. That they're carrying you to Murda Jabardast hai or something. That you're gone. So this is a natural process, which I'm sure all of you relate to. If you have an infant, or even if you have a teenager right now, or some of you, I think teenager is what we have mostly. So what is really being presented? So this is Guru Nanak's style, that he will do a listing of his observation, and then he presents idea. And he basically says, you can read it here. This is the line which, and you'll see this is a repeated theme in Gurbani. I mean, it's giving other ideas here too. Ki Hans chala gaya. Hans is the idea of the real life within you. That actually the real you never came out, and all these other 10 things overpowered you. Hans Dasaira. Anyway, so what happened? Guru Sahib is saying, if there is no Guru in life, the world without Guru is drowning. This is what the life will be. Now, Guru, we know, means all sorts of things. For our discussion, we're going to stick to it means wisdom. Something which takes us away from ignorance to enlightenment, that idea. So the very premise, we were discussing all sorts of, those graphs and other things, is that unless there is a better understanding, a better thought process, a better worldview, pretty much this is how the life looks like. And that's what's being described at large. Yeah. So then it comes in, then what does the best thing we can do is what's available to us as a Ekankar, because this is where Gurbani starts. The idea of Pratpalak comes in. And so here is, I'm going to use only 1 or 2 slides on Gurbani. What is the high level view of then what do we become? In fact, we are told to become like Vaheguru in everything. So let's apply that to parenting. Why not apply it here? And then we'll try to see it in history, how gurus did it. So one of the qualities of Vaheguru, which in parenting angle is caretaker. Now that's something we have to look at. What is that caretaker business? Are we here? I mean, we have this idea that I am, this investment because I am the one who owns you. And this idea comes a lot in Gurbani. Whether it's between husband, wife, state and the constituency, guru and you, people who claim to be gurus, that somebody is going to own you. So are we doing the same thing or are we taking care of them? They're two different things. So anyway, do we really feel this child is of the divine? Or do we say, I am their child? For example, मैं आमतौर पर कहना हूँ ना सानू किसी ने ना कोई बहुत expensive चीज़ देती होवे कि इन्हें थोड़ी देर लिए रख लो मैं ताड़े को ले लाँगा. We pay extra attention to make sure कि उन्हें कुछ हो ना जाए. जे कुछ हो जाता, you break all sorts of trusts and all sorts of things happen. Sometimes political murders like Ponti Chadda and Hardeep, you heard what happened 2 weeks ago. It's not as simple as they have shown it. There's a whole political plot there. The point is, when trusts break, all sorts of things happen. If the idea do we look at parenting as a caretaking business? Using your term, business, sorry, but as a caretaker. Second idea is, and I'm going to put a question mark on this one for a second. Yeah, I know love and unconditional love has multiple things going on in this world depending on who you ask. But whatever this means to you, that this idea that you're not expecting anything in return. Because for example, it says कि जेड़े रब नू deny भी करते ने एक ओंकार नू, Vaheguru is not taking the air away from them. They're still able to breathe. That's the idea. So at what point are you able to get there? That you're actually able to operate how you need to operate rather than expecting something. I'm not saying anything about do you do this for a 4-year-old or do you do this for a 19-year-old. But you'll have to figure that out. At some point, this needs to happen, that transition. And the third thing is continuous gifting. Gurbani's major theme is Vaheguru is continuously giving. So it's actually giving. Again, it's related to the second part, but a little different because there the idea is why you do it, and third part is your behavior. Yeah. So essentially what it boils down to is this. Is it really just about responsibility and caretaker? And somebody mentioned the word responsible. Or is it really about attachment or expectation? There are two dichotomies being developed there. And you got to start looking at where do I stand from that angle. But from a Vaheguru's angle, if Vaheguru is the one we learn from, is the source for us. In parenting, how do we invoke this source? This idea of love of Vaheguru, this idea of caretaker, and this idea of continuous giver. Now let's quickly apply this to history. Hanji.
Just the second one. That's like a constant dilemma for a parent. The divine ignores my faults. You kids throwing pillows in the living room. You can't ignore the faults. I think that's a constant dilemma. How much do you just embrace and love and let them do what they want to do versus guidance and telling them, dictating what they do. That's a really hard one. Ignore my faults.
They're all very hard, but thanks for sharing that. And here is an explanation perhaps. So these are ideals. Maybe I am 2% of where I need to be. And before the next 3-4 years, I need to come to 20% of it. Something like that. As a parent, if the child is, again, the age matters. If you know there's a 4-year-old and there's a snake in front and it's putting his finger, you need to stop that. But if it's a 20-year-old who wants to now not follow your way of lifestyle, you got to figure out how to let go. And if they're ready to come back 7 years later, are you open to take them back? It's those kind of things. It's absolutely, all these are continuous dilemmas. They're very, very tough. They're very painful things. They're very...
Switch the other one.
But anyway, all it requires is a gentle touch.
Someone who knows what is doing.
Yeah, that's not gentle, not just touch. Some touches can really mess you up. Okay, so I agree with you, Panji. It's just these are ideals. Keep this in mind. Gurbani talks about the ideals, and I know most of us want to know, is this better than that? And what I'm driving towards is at least recognize the ideals, and then you got to make your own plan and which one to apply where. Okay, now this simple table, all it's showing is, you can see Nanak the 8th, Guru Har Krishan Sahib is the exception because he was a preteen, but all of them had children. And those are their names. Some of them, as I mentioned, went from being ultra rebellious of starting alternative religion to like Chote Sahibzades, where they all followed whatever Guru Gobind Singh asked them to, and they did it willingly. And they have gone through all sorts of things in this scenario. Just so you know, for example, that Guru Arjan Sahib's brothers, you know their history. They, in fact, had conspiracy to kill Guru Har Gobind Sahib when he was a child by poisoning him. So they're dealing with, what you might see in an old bad Hindi movie or the old Western classics, epical movies. They show this. Aristocrats used to do this to each other. You either kill them or you marry them. That's what they used to do. So gurus are dealing with all this. They are dealing with state issues at the same time. All I'm saying is that they're extremely busy as well. And in every case, and the reason I want to bring this up, in every case, if you apply the worldly criteria, they're not successful parents. Worldly, what we might say. Appa kehne na dekha, ode nyane keda sikhayegi? Bada banaya firda. Well, by that measure, where are you going to put Guru Nanak Sahib? So this is actually about managing your own expectation. Why am I doing it? What product am I trying to deliver? More important is, what really is my reason to do this? Because, again, let's put it, very black and white. Here are all their kids. They did all sorts of things. Some were extremely good. In some cases, they directed the future gurus to Sikhi. Yeah, that happened too. In other cases, they became... Like one of the women is related, like in several generations of guruship. In other cases, they conspired to kill him. In other cases, they sold him out. In other cases, they conspired with Aurangzeb, for example. That's how they got Dehradun. So my point is our criteria going to be solely based on your legacy, which is your kids? If it is, our history shows that cannot be. Which means you got to go back and evaluate why you do what you do. It cannot just be measured by the offsprings you have. Obviously, you have certain responsibility. You're going to raise them. But if they turn out to be whatever, it doesn't mean you're a failure. I mean, I'm dealing with some of this, and I'll mention this briefly, that one of my board members called me 3 years ago and said, Harinder, I want to resign. I'm like, Ki gal hoyi? And I'm just sharing this with you. And he's like, I haven't talked to anyone. I'm calling you right now because my daughter is marrying a non-Sikh. And it's going to reflect poorly on the organization. I'm like, I heard him. I'm like, when we got you as a board member, the criteria was you, not your kids. So I'm all for you staying, and I will make a case for you to stay because we cannot go. And I went through the whole spiel. Now, so I'm just giving this as a practical example. What happens is when these things happen in our personal lives, community, family, we start changing criterias. क्योंकि इमोशन बहुत तगड़ा होता है उस वेले कि हाँ यार consequences की हो जाएंगे, what will the world think, but you got to start thinking about some of that stuff. It's same thing at a family level. Kids, how they turn out, what they end up doing in life after whatever age, I don't know, 18, 19, are you really responsible? Okay, so just hold that thought. The idea was gurus dealt with this. They had all sorts of spectrum on the deliverables of their children. The spectrum is very wide. I mean, how bad can it get other than that they are conspiring to kill you, or they have started alternative religion, which is completely discarding what Guru Nanak said, for example. And in fact, just to give you a graphic on it, if you have seen Baba Siri Chand's picture on poster arts or other places, they show him as a shaved head with a light blue color to it. That's him. Which only in two other tradition, in Indian tradition, there are only two other places, the two other personalities who are shown like that. One is Shiv, the other is Krishna. So they are considered actually the non-Aryan gods of Hinduism now, because they became so popular, which means Sri Chand actually had become very popular, of Udasi order, that Hinduism wanted to make them part of their own. So there's internal discrimination going on. It's a separate issue, but just something to correlate that he didn't just start a cult. He actually became very successful at it, to the level where people Guru Nanak was confronting, they actually took his son on and made him part of the larger fold. So that light blue color is only 3 people so far in the Hindu tradition. Okay. All right. So a little bit, I talked about this. Guru Nanak Sahib di gal hogi. Guru Har Rai Sahib, Ram Rai is his son, who actually misrepresents the Sikhs, and Guru Sahib ends up excommunication. You know, today we do excommunication on stupid things, but as a parent, can you imagine? As a father, he trusted his, you know, he sent him as emissary to like today's Supreme Court, and he just changed one word orally, and he said that's not acceptable. So maybe it does have to do with the values part. We have to evaluate which value transfer are we trying to give them. I mean, then we have examples like, just, I like this example, I'll put it in today's context. If your son or daughter walked up to you today and says, you know, you need to give up your life to protect what's going on, most probably you'll be like, chal bare. But that's the system. This is the tradition we belong to, where Guru Gobind Singh stood in front of his dad and he says, you're the man. You got to go do this. So value transfer to kuch is tarah da ho raha hai, and we'll have to think about that.
Just to पहले जरा एक सवाल आया इसका about you know unconditional love versus tough love, etc. So इसके भी tough love आ रहा है, right? Because Guru Sahib excommunicated Ram Rai and in Gurbani.
Right.
You know, obviously he's following Gurbani, but at the same time showing tough love.
Yeah.
So they have an example of that.
Yeah, so that's why I picked more extreme examples, because then we can see that if an extreme situation is na kuch ho raha. So he didn't, no excommunication when the sons started alternative religion. You see how the clarity is that they're disagreeing with you is not excommunication. They're starting parallel institutions to put you down is also not a problem. But if you say you are something and you go misrepresent the whole community, what we call you sell out the community, he doesn't think twice about telling the world that this is not my son. So, फर्क है 2 चीज़ें बहुत. एक हैगा personally I'm not satisfied with what they're doing. एक हैगा now they're undermining the whole community and the whole system. Okay. Now, Mata's Gujri stories you guys know, but the way to look, and one element of looking at that is what, and I generally say this at their Gurpurab, but just to reiterate it here, what parenting, and she's a grandparent now, is she doing without telling them what to go say in the court? Mostly we tell our kids what to go do. At some point it needs to be where the response is coming out habitually. She didn't tell them, what to go say when they appear in court. And there was no Harvard lawyer standing there preparing them what to say. So how does it happen? That's the tough part, and we'll get there. But the example is, are we preparing them so the response is habitual, naturally coming out, rather than the one we send with a prepared response? I like to mention this because they just get ignored quite a bit. Growing up, actually, the way my Nanaji used to do Ardas, he used to have a whole paragraph on this. And it has certain impressions on me. And I actually say this about even calendar art. I mean, I would really like, we're developing so many different arts. I want to see the faces of those women, plural, hundreds of them. What does it take? Tough love idea. What does it take that you are imprisoned, you have your infants and toddlers with you, and they're being cut into pieces? This literally happened not with one or two women, with hundreds. Only about 200 years ago. And they make a garland and put them on their neck. I want to see the face of that woman or those women. That to me is Sikhi Siddhak. Or at least one element of it. But we are not exploring that. What does it take? Kinni strength ho ki hai? I mean, what is that? I have no idea what it is. But it is a huge part of our tradition. Jis vele a phrase became that you can keep killing them, we will get doubled and tripled. So that phrase came from this time where not 1 or 2, 10 or 20, but hundreds of women. What kind of parenting is that if you apply world's logic, right? They're like, it's okay. We want more. So what I'm saying is, what does she look like?